y'all, it's Laura and welcome back to another Cocoa Vanilla Studio process video. This one is using the oldest collection in my stash. This is the Cocoa Vanilla Studio Hello Sunshine collection, and I believe it's from 2014, something like that, 2015, somewhere around there. This really is the oldest collection in my stash, and I have hoarded it for a very long time. And so I decided it was time to dig in and to get it used. I want to get it used up by the end of the year because I have new Cocoa Vanilla collections coming in all of the time. I need to make room. My Cocoa Vanilla stash is taking over and it needs to be tamed. And I'd much rather use it then get rid of it. So that's what I'm going to do today. I decided to create an interesting little pattern here. I had some partial pieces of paper and decided to just use my mat to stick them together into a 12 by 12 size because I wanted to create a partition. Not exactly in the center. I actually believe that the denim side is about 7 inches and then the wood grain side was 6 inches, and then I taped them together so that I overlapped the denim on top of the wood grain about an inch or ½ inch, something like that. So give yourself some room there to work with so you don't have to put another piece of paper behind them. So I have these two photos of myself and my youngest son, and he has always been a complete goofball, especially with me. So I thought it would be really funny to do a sweet little layout just of the two of us taking some silly selfies. These are old, probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I just thought it fit perfectly with the colors in this collection, even if this isn't some outdoorsy, boating, because there's a lot of boating things in this collection. It's very summer themed and very boating themed, but I made it work for these two selfie photos. So what I'm going to do is cut up some 2x2 squares to do a grid on the left side, and then on the right side I will have essentially a 6x12 layout. Now the reason for this design is because I have quite a few embellishments from this collection, but not a lot of paper. I have used quite a bit of the paper up. And so I wanted to create an opportunity for me to use several different embellishments without overwhelming my photos. And so in my mind, I was thinking, well, I could compartmentalize those two areas, have an embellishment side and have a photo side, and thus this layout is born. It was a lot of fun to do. It was great to cut into these 12 by 12 papers because I find I'm much more likely to reach for these papers and use these papers if they've already been cut into. Even if there's a small part of my heart that breaks every time I have to cut into a brand new 12 by 12 for just a little square. I can't help it. It's an obsessive hoarder of paper thing, I'm sure. But I'm mostly using scraps. Did have to cut into a couple of 12 by 12s to get a bit of variety in the colors, moving things around so I don't have two of the same right next to each other. And these little background spots I think add a little pop of color to the page, but the little embellishment clusters that I put on top of them I think really make them fun. It was a really neat idea. It was something I really had to sketch out in my head, and in doing so I ended up actually creating a sketch for this layout, which you will see at the end before the still photos, and it is also available on the blog at cocoavanilla.com.au, and so you can see the sketch there as well. This is a great idea if you don't have a ton of paper even. You could just use scraps on the left side and just mat your photos on the right side, and you have yourself a compartmentalized grid layout. Pulling in a lot of cut aparts here to see what I have. I have my embellishment tray to the right. This is just a condiment tray that I found on Amazon, and I find it so helpful to have these little compartments to pour in my different kinds of embellishments so I can flip through them quickly without them getting all mixed up and making one big pile to have to sift through. So I'm just pulling in some very simple embellishing on the right side. I'm going to have a label underneath. I'm going to have my title underneath, have a couple bits and pieces tucked into the top, but that right side is going to stay very simple so that my photos remain the focus of the layout. And then on the left, I of course will add in quite a bit more to these little boxes. Each of them will have something a little bit different. I'm going to incorporate some ephemera, some puffy stickers, some cut aparts, all the pretty things, some enamel dots, everything that I've got. I'm going to go ahead and try to use up on this layout. Not all of the things will make it onto this layout, but I do get to use quite a bit of this puffy sticker sheet in particular, and I really like how that worked out. I especially love these little tiny words on the puffy sticker sheet. I don't see this very much anymore, these tiny, tiny puffy words, and I love them. They're perfect for this. And so I'm just grabbing whatever I think I can make work, even this anchor. Now, I'm not a boating person. I'm also not really an outside person, so anything that has a heavy theme of the outdoors, I tend to use on photos of my kids because they are outdoorsy people, or my husband because he is as well. But it's unusual for me to use outdoorsy, summery, boating themed things on photos of myself. So that's a little bit different, little challenge for myself to incorporate that type of thing onto this layout, which is just a couple of silly selfies with my son. Now, one of the little jokes between him and I is when he gets kind of cranky, I tell him I'm going to give him the kissing treatment. And what this means is I kiss him all over his cheeks and on top of his head until he laughs. So he is no longer in a cranky mood. And even at the ripe old age of almost 12, it still works. And he finds it hysterical. I'm sure a little embarrassing, but hysterical. I don't do it in public. I don't want to embarrass him in public, but he does find it very funny. And it's just a way to break the ice when you've got a cranky preteen that I think is worth doing. It's worth, having those silly moments and reminding them that no, you're not just that parent that tells them to do their chores. You're also that parent that really cares about them and likes to see them happy. So I am going to play around with the titling a little bit. I had a lot of options in the ephemera pack, decided on Hello Sunshine. And as you can see, I kind of pop back and forth between the grid side and the photo side, just as I found things in the ephemera pack. I am an ephemera user more than any other embellishments. I love ephemera. I love fussy cut my papers into ephemera. I just prefer it over stickers, over even puffy stickers, even though I love those. So over any other kind of embellishment, ephemera will always have my heart. I just find it so easy to use. Now I considered adding some stars up here at the top, thought it was kind of a cool look. I brought in the puffy stars to see if I could make it work, and in the end I felt like it was a little out of place. If I could have done the stars all the way down the center column between those photos, I think it would have worked just fine. However, I didn't have that many stars, and so I do end up pulling those off and going with something else, but it was an interesting idea, and I would encourage you to give that a go because it looked really neat, if only I'd had more stars to continue it down the page. Now, one of the things that I wanted to keep in mind between these two areas or compartments on my layout was that I didn't want to overwhelm one side versus the other. I knew I was going to keep the right side a little simpler, and that's why I chose to use that darker denim behind my photos, because if I had used white cardstock there, then the stark differences in the amount of embellishing that was on the right side of the page versus the left side of the page would have been very noticeable, and to me would have felt unbalanced. Personally, I find if I use a pattern paper background that I don't feel the need to fill in that part of the layout as much as the lighter or white cardstock part of the layout. So on the left I have that light wood grain, so I felt like I could fill that up and it would have the same presence as the darker but more simply embellished side of the layout. I am bringing in those stars into a couple of areas around my photos. I did want to get them onto the page. I love using stars for boy layouts, and I'm not entirely sure why, and I think it's just because I see them the same way that I see hearts for girl layouts, and so I just kind of equate in my head stars with boy layouts. Now I have used stars on girl layouts and I have used hearts on boy layouts, but just in my head that's my natural reaction. Now I am bringing in the sticker sheet here. As you can see, not much on it has gotten used at this point. I absolutely love this collection, but I have definitely been hoarding the embellishments in a bad way. And so I'm really excited to see some of these embellishments getting used, and I expect that I will at some point run out of paper and we'll just start using these embellishments with other papers. But I need to make room in my stash, and this is a good way to do it, to dig it out and make some layouts with it, especially with pattern paper background, because that really encourages me to dig deep and be creative with the collection. So now that I have a little sticker notepad punched piece there at the top, really liked that effect. It gives it an impression of layering. Even though it's just a sticker, it looks like pattern paper has been layered behind it, and that little word phrase functions as a tab up there at the top. And then I'm going to start working on these little squares on the left. I did glue them down off camera, and I think I really like having this mix of embellishments on that left side. I tried to balance out the colors as well as I could and the shapes so that I didn't have all the circles right next to each other, all of the words right next to each other. I have them mixed up in different areas so it coordinates, but not every square matches. I am going to use my white Uniball gel pen to add some lines for my journaling underneath. I do have that little label there, but that wasn't going to be enough space because I'm a wordy girl. I have lots to say always. So I needed to add just a little extra space for my journaling. So I'm gonna have some journaling here in the white pen, which I think looks really cool on that dark denim background. And then a little bit of journaling on the tag as well, sneaking it in wherever I can. I also went ahead and outlined all of the squares with my navy pen. That way they have a little bit of a shadow to them, and it helps them kind of pop off the page. That little bit of outlining just gives the impression of depth, giving them a little bit of a shadow look so that they just pop right up off the page and makes them a little bit more interesting. Now, in doing this, do be careful because I have just then made a mistake with outlining my squares, but you know what? I kind of think this also looks a bit like stitching. And stitching is not intended to look perfect. You always have loose threads. You always have little bits and pieces that didn't stitch quite right. And so I kind of look at it in that perspective that perfection is not required in scrapbooking, and it's okay to have a little mistake on your page. It doesn't ruin the whole page. You're not going to throw the whole page away because you have, oops, a little overlap in your outlining. So don't panic if you make a small mistake like that. It happens to all of us eventually. But overall, I really like how this one turned out, and I think the outlining really helps to define those little squares and have them hold their own on the page. Bring in my gold Nuvo drops to do a little controlled splattering before I come in with the Heidi Swapp Color Shine to do some uncontrolled splattering, and I really love how it looks, especially on this dark denim paper. The gold splatter on a dark background has my heart and forever will. I love the way that it looks. I think it's such a cool effect, and it really pops on that dark color even more than on white cardstock. I did add a little bit around some of the squares to the left, but not all of them, and I've kept it pretty simple. Here's the sketch and the still photos. I hope you've enjoyed this. Until next time, bye y'all.